Hey, my name's May, and today I am talking about my experience with a certain weight loss medication. I'm not going to say the name of the medication because apparently it has people ghosted. YouTube's kind of funny when you say the name of certain medications sometimes. So I'm not going to say the name of the medication, but overall, the message of this video is to, do your research on a medication before you start taking it, just to be fully aware, because I did not, and I had a lot of side effects. I guess to start, I had finally been able to go to a doctor specifically for the intent to lose weight. I had asked the doctor also for a medication for anxiety and for depression. And so in the same breath, the doctor prescribed the medication for the anxiety and depression and also a stimulant medication that was intended to help me lose weight. So it's kind of like, and if you know anything about anxiety is like you're already kind of like operating like pretty excessively. So then you put a stimulant on top of that and it's a lot. But at first I didn't do my research. I didn't do my research on the medication, and so I didn't think about it. The anxiety and depression medication, that was fine. But this weight loss medication, this had me I like at first it wasn't too bad, but then I wasn't able to sleep, but I also didn't feel like I needed to sleep. Like I was like, and I'm a person where I've had trouble with my sleep patterns. So I would sleep sometimes not well, sometimes very well. And then I would wake up like 4 hours, 6 hours, and I'd be good. I'd be like, I have so much energy. I could do anything. Like I was losing my mind basically with how much energy I had. And I say that literally because suddenly, I was buying pets. Like I bought a pet mouse and her name was Komugi and she was very cute and I loved her. She passed away, unfortunately, but then I had gotten a hamster cage to keep her in, and then it didn't make sense because she's too small for a hamster cage, but I didn't think of that at the time. So then I got her a different enclosure, which she did fit in, but then I got a hamster to put in the hamster cage. Like instead of just trying to like return the hamster cage, I'm like, no, let me get a whole hamster. And meanwhile, I completely forgot that I am allergic to rodents. And I bought 2. It was wild. And at the time, I was still living with my parents. So then I also had the wild idea that I could turn my room into an apartment because I was just suddenly so, it was a very rough time for me emotionally. And my parents and I weren't always really like seeing eye to eye with everything. And so I just didn't want to interact with them as much as possible. So I was like, my room can be an apartment. So I'm like, I bought a toaster oven, I bought cabinets, I bought a miniature washing machine so that I didn't have to leave my room. Like, and I was still working, but I made a miniature kitchen and like I had my cabinets, and so I was using them as pantry, and I would just eat in it was wild. And like looking back, I really see the like lack of sanity going on there, but at the time I was just like, no, everything's fine, and I'm losing weight and it's working. There was so much going on. It's like difficult to even explain it completely, to be honest, because a lot of it also was how I felt. And I was on that medication and I made some decisions that were not probably for the best. Like I quit one job And when I quit that job, I went to work with some friends, but I just wasn't behaving in a way that was very helpful to the situation. And so I kind of self-sabotaged myself there. And I quit the job. I quit like a stable job to, work with my friends, and without really knowing all the details that entailed. So I ended up basically having 3 jobs at one point while I was on this weight loss medication. And again, this weight loss medication, it just had me thinking that I could do almost anything. So I had 3 jobs, and one of them was working at a animal shelter, which I did enjoy. It was very nice. But aside from, like mucking I'm going to say the stables, but that's not what they're called, where the dogs were kept. But I loved working with the dogs. The dogs were great. It was nice to see them get good homes. They're so many of them were adorable. It was hard work, and the pay rate was awful. It was at like 11 an hour, I think. And you didn't get a break because the shifts were like 4-hour shifts, or were they 6-hour shifts? I can't even remember now, but I just know that you didn't get a break at all. And that's, for me, I tend to get a little lightheaded if I don't eat within a certain time periods. So that wasn't a smart idea for me either. But I was on this weight loss medication that just made me think I could do just about anything. So, I was just trucking through. And then at the same time, like, I would get tired. So then I started like drinking energy drinks in the morning, which I never drink energy drinks. Like, I really don't. I don't really drink coffee that much. Like, every once in a while, if I'm feeling super tired, I'll drink a coffee, but I don't drink it daily. But at this point in my life, I was having like Rain energy drinks like every morning, and I was taking caffeine pills too on top of this weight loss stimulant. And I just thought that that all made sense because it was like off and on tiredness and then excessive amounts of energy. And then it had me having like these like, I guess, palpitations, where like I was just feeling like so, like my heart was just like thrumming. That was kind of like, okay, that wasn't good. And it also just consistently, this medication, it made me feel this consistent sense of urgency. Like, my plans need to be done now. I need to be done doing this immediately. It was difficult to relax, and I was just acting in ways that was just, it didn't make sense. And see, part of this issue also is that it was my first time going to that doctor. I didn't have a whole lot of follow-ups with that doctor. And then I also wasn't really sure. I wasn't in the right headspace to understand what was going on with me and what was abnormal about my behavior. Let me say that. And then so I was panicking at a point because I decided to quit the shelter job because I didn't like it anymore. Which, that is a valid reason to leave a job, but it makes more sense to ensure that you have another job before you quit the first job. That just is what makes the most sense. But oh my goodness, during that time I was losing my mind. And then when I did that, then simultaneously the other 2 jobs kind of fizzled out. And part of that also was because I was panicking about my life, and I was panicking about, and this was before I had married my husband, I was panicking about not being married, and I was just feeling so stressed about it that I desperately needed help. And so I ended up leaving town for about a month because I needed to recuperate, and I needed to have space from everything, because again, my parents and I weren't really seeing eye to eye, and I was just so easily triggered. I was just so emotionally overreactive. But then when I quit my job, the first job, not the shelter job, the first job, that job had benefits that allowed me to be able to get my medication. So then when I quit that job, I was no longer able to take the medication that was for weight loss. And so I started panicking about that because I didn't even realize that. I didn't even think about that. It wasn't my first job, but it was among my first jobs that I had once I started like doing my own taxes and things, and, not being claimed under my parents as a dependent. So because that was the case, then I was like not going to be able to take that medication anymore. And so I was panicking about probably having to gain weight. I was frustrated about my like continued stress regarding weight loss. It just, I that whole month, when I went out of town, I literally just stayed in a relative's basement in like their room. They had an extra room, and I stayed in that extra room, and I slept and I watched cartoons and YouTube, and I just kind of waited for the medication to run out, the weight loss medication. But with weight loss medication, with stimulants, with any medication really, you have to, if you're going to stop taking it, you have to wean yourself off of it. But I didn't do that. And I had a family member who suggested to me that I needed to make sure I did that. And I did, but I didn't. So then I ran out of the medication, and I was really, really losing my marbles. Like, I was like using excessive amounts of like rubbing alcohol, like using it to clean my body because I felt so like excessively like dirty, I guess. And I like my skin, and I felt so uncomfortable, and I was just using a ton of rubbing alcohol, and it was affecting my relatives' allergies. I was like going grocery shopping and then just leaving my snacks in the basement, and I would basically most of the time just stay there and eat, and I wouldn't really interact with them as much. I was depressed, and I wasn't hyper, but I was like emotionally my mind was running. It was running and running and running, and I was just so emotionally disturbed. Eventually it toned down. Eventually it winded down. Eventually I was able to like gather my faculties, but it took like a month. It took like a month and a half to get that all together. And that was over the span of this whole situation was over the span of probably like 4 to 6 months. Yeah, like 6 months. And so, long story short, basically, do your research on your medication. And if you're going to use a weight loss medication, especially, do your research. Do so much research, see other people's experiences and things as well, because sometimes things are just experience. You try like trial and error, and that's a lot of medicine, unfortunately, is just trial and error. You need to pay attention to yourself. Are you doing things that are different than you normally do? Ask your family and friends, am I behaving differently than I normally do? Am I just being more like erratic? Am I being more sporadic? And, make sure you have a good relationship with your doctor, and you're consistently talking with your doctor about, what's going on, because I didn't have that. I had the doctor, but then it's like, I also didn't realize what was going on with me. So like, if the doctor asked me like, hey, what's going on? How are you doing? I'd be like, I'm okay. I feel like I have a lot of energy. Like, the doctor didn't say anything about that to me. They didn't catch that. And if they didn't catch that, that's a problem. Also, I didn't catch that within myself. I didn't, take my relatives' advice seriously. Like, my parents at the time were like, I think your medication is messing with you, and I just didn't want to believe them. If you're considering a medication, again, just research. Make sure you have a good relationship with your doctor. Make sure your family, your immediate family, is aware and is able to help you monitor yourself when it comes to the medication, so that if any like erratic behavior is occurring, that you guys are able to work through it together. And that is all my advice. But that was a difficult time in my life. But you know, I made it through, and I have the knowledge to be able to pass on to others. So for that, I'm thankful. But anyway, thanks for watching. And if you have any more questions about this situation that I had, feel free to leave them below. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.